I never really felt like part of the family. Not the way my older sister Lauren was, anyway. She was the golden child. Prom queen, straight A's, soccer captain, all wrapped in this perfect little bow of approval. And me? I was the one they forgot to pick up from school. The one who got grounded for things she did. The one who learned early on that keeping my head down was safer than speaking up. We grew up in a mid-sized town in Oregon. Not rich, not poor, just plain. My dad worked at a lumber company until he slipped a disc in his back and never quite recovered. After that, he was either doped up on pain meds or yelling at Fox News. My mom worked nights at the ER. I remember her mostly in scrubs, tired eyes, and this sharp way of talking that made you feel stupid even when she was technically right. I was 13 the first time I realized I wasn't just a disappointment to her. I was her scapegoat. It started small. Missing silverware? My fault. Lauren's phone went missing for 2 days, and somehow, even though I'd been grounded with no electronics, that was my fault too. Mom never hit us, but her mouth was a weapon. "You're just like your father," she'd spit, even though I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. Quiet? Tired? Broken? By the time I was 16, I'd stopped trying. I worked weekends at a grocery store just to avoid being home. I saved every dollar, planned to leave the day I turned 18. And I did. I went to community college 2 towns over. Small victory, but it felt massive. I didn't tell them I'd applied, didn't ask for help, just packed my stuff and left a note. "Don't worry, you don't have to blame me anymore." For a while, I thought distance would fix everything. But families like mine don't do clean breaks. They leave hooks in you. Every missed call from Mom felt like a trap. Every voicemail started sweet and ended sour. "Just calling to check in, but I guess you're too busy for your family now." Typical. And Lauren? She was always the messenger. "Mom's really stressed. Can you just apologize?" Apologize for what? I never got an answer. Things boiled over 3 years later when my grandmother died. She'd lived in a care facility near us. She and I had a quiet connection. Not hugs and cookies, but small moments. She taught me how to balance a checkbook, showed me how to write letters that made people feel seen. And she left me something. A box. Just a plain wooden box with my name carved into it. I got it a week after the funeral. Lauren had delivered it, reluctantly, saying, "Don't let Mom know. She thinks Grandma was slipping mentally at the end." That box changed everything. Inside was a letter. Not a will, but close. It said, "You've always been the one who listened, even when no one else did. There are things you deserve to know. I kept them because I was afraid, but that's no excuse. The truth is, your mother lied about your father. He didn't leave because of drugs. He left because of her." Attached was a photocopy of a court document, sealed, old, faded. A protective order. My mom had filed it when I was 5, then dropped it months later. My grandmother wrote that it was all a cover to keep custody and hide the affair she'd had, with the man Lauren still calls Dad. I sat with that box for hours, read the letter again and again, and then I did something stupid. I confronted Mom. I drove back for the first time in years. She opened the door like I was Jehovah's Witness, arms crossed, eyes cold. I told her I wanted to talk. She said, 5 minutes. I handed her the letter. She didn't even flinch, just stared at it and said, I knew she'd pull something like this. No denial, no anger, just annoyance, like I'd found a skeleton in a closet she stopped caring about years ago. "Do you want to know the truth?" she asked. Fine. He was going to leave anyway. He was weak. I did what I had to do. Then she tore the letter in half and said, "Now you can go back to pretending you're better than us." That was the moment I knew. She would never see me. Not as a son, not as a person, just a mirror of everything she hated. But what she didn't know was that I'd already made a copy. And what I did with it, well, let's just say I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore.
After she tore up the letter and told me my father was too weak to stay, I left the house shaking. Not with sadness, not even with rage, just this cold, hollow clarity, like my whole life had been built on a lie, and now that lie had teeth. I drove for hours, ended up parked outside a gas station in the middle of nowhere, staring at the copy of the letter on the passenger seat. The words felt heavier now. My grandmother wasn't just trying to clear her conscience. She was handing me a weapon. I had spent my whole life thinking my dad abandoned me, that he was some addict loser who chose pills over parenting. But that story, that's what Mom fed us. It was easy to believe when she told it over and over, always with that tight smile and tired voice. He couldn't handle being a father. You're lucky I kept this family together. But the letter said different. The court documents said different. I wasn't the son of some failure. I was the son of a man who was chased away, who might have even tried to fight for me, before she crushed him under whatever stories she spun. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, replaying every moment I'd ever been blamed, shamed, screamed at, every time she told me I was broken, like him. And then I remembered something strange. A letter I found in the attic once, when I was 9. It was in an envelope with no name, no stamp, just shoved between boxes. I'd opened it thinking it was mine. It started with, "Dear Evan," my name. But the handwriting wasn't familiar. It talked about missing birthdays, about watching from afar, about not being allowed near the school. I asked Mom about it. She told me it was a prank. Your cousin did that as a joke. I believed her. I was a kid. But now, that letter wasn't a joke. It was him. It was my dad. And she'd hidden it like it was trash. I went back to my apartment the next day, opened my laptop, and started digging. Court records, old addresses, public archives. I found his full name, Evan Daniel Royce. I found a last known address in Sacramento, and I found a Facebook profile. It was barely active. A photo from 2014, a man with tired eyes and graying hair holding a dog, but it was him. My eyes, my face, my name. I sent a message. "I think you might be my father. If you're not, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need answers." I didn't expect anything. I half thought Mom had already told him to stay gone, but 2 days later, I got a reply. "Evan? I've waited 20 years to hear from you." That cracked something inside me. We talked for hours. First messages, then calls. He told me everything. He tried to get custody when I was little, but the court sided with Mom, said the household was stable. She accused him of emotional instability. He admitted he'd had panic attacks, depression, but never violence, never drugs. He said he wrote me every month for 5 years. Never got a reply. Said he mailed presents, letters, even called the school once and got threatened with police. She erased him, fully, perfectly. And when I asked him why he didn't fight harder, he said, "I tried. But your mother? She knew how to make me look like a monster. And I didn't want to hurt you by dragging you through court." That's the thing about people like my mom. They're master storytellers. They rewrite the past until they believe it, and then they punish you for remembering it differently. But I had something she didn't count on. Proof. The court doc, the box, the letter, and now my father's testimony. So I made a plan. First, I posted everything anonymously on a family history forum, not as revenge, but as preservation. I wanted the truth to live somewhere. Then I reached out to Lauren. She didn't believe me at first, said I was twisting things to feel special. So I sent her the scans, the court doc, the letter from Grandma, our father's address. She went silent for 3 days. Then she called crying. Said she found an old shoebox in Mom's closet, letters with my name, unopened. All from Dad, stamped, postmarked, hidden. She was shaken. I told her the truth hurts, but it also heals. Then I did the final thing. I sent Mom a package. Inside, a printed copy of the full truth. All of it. Letter, scans, photos, and a note that said, "You don't get to rewrite me anymore." Her response came in the form of silence. No calls, no threats, just nothing. But I knew she got it. I knew she read every word, because 2 weeks later, my aunt called and said, "Your mother's been telling people you're spreading lies about her, but I read the documents. I believe you." And then another relative reached out, and another. Turns out I wasn't the only one she lied to. I was just the first one to stop being afraid of the truth. And that was the beginning of real justice. The moment I realized I had power over the truth, something inside me shifted. It wasn't revenge I was after, not at first. It was recognition of what she did, of what I lost, and of the version of myself she tried to bury. But power is a funny thing. Once you get a taste, it's hard to stop. After my mom started panicking behind the scenes, telling relatives I was unstable, dangerous, a liar, I saw it for what it was. Fear. Not grief, not denial. She was scared of exposure. And that made her more dangerous. So I changed the rules. I took everything she tried to control, the story, the past, the family legacy, and flipped it. I started talking publicly. At first anonymously, on Reddit of all places. I posted on r/raised-by-narcissists. My thread got traction fast. Dozens of people commented, "This is my mother. I lived this too. Please update us." So I did. Every step. I uploaded the court scans, the letters. I blurred out names, but it didn't matter. People believed it, and more importantly, they related to it. And suddenly, I wasn't just healing, I was helping. That's when Lauren joined me. She texted me. I read the whole thread. I cried. I'm in. She offered to help fact-check dates, even posted a few memories from her own childhood. She remembered things I'd buried, like when Mom made us burn a drawing our dad sent, calling it trash from a deadbeat. And now she remembered it all differently, through a lens of truth. That same week, I got another message from my dad. He'd read the thread too. "I never thought anyone would believe me again. Thank you for giving me back my son." We agreed to meet. I flew to Sacramento, palms sweating the whole flight. We met in a small diner. He stood up when I walked in, eyes red, hands shaking. "You're taller than I imagined," he said, laughing through tears. That day was quiet, heavy, but healing. He brought photos of me, ones he'd taken from newspaper clippings, old social media posts from friends of friends. He said he kept a file on me for years, just in case I ever came back. I realized then he'd never stopped loving me. He just hadn't been allowed to. I stayed for 3 days. Met his partner, a kind man named Joel. They'd been together for 10 years. I saw the life he rebuilt. Small, simple, but honest. I told him everything Mom had done, and he just nodded like it didn't surprise him at all. She always needed control. Even when we were dating, I felt like a passenger in my own life. On the flight home, I decided I wasn't done. Telling the truth online was one thing, but what about offline? I remembered that Mom had built an entire business off her single mom story. She ran a local nonprofit for abandoned women, gave talks, even did interviews. She wore her martyrdom like a brand. So I started collecting everything. Flyers, quotes, archived interviews. In one article, she literally said, "Their father was a ghost. I raised 2 children alone against all odds. I couldn't stomach it. Not anymore." So I wrote a letter to the board of her nonprofit, attached the real court file, the paternity test, my story. I didn't demand she be fired. I just said, "You deserve to know who's running your mission." 3 days later, her photo disappeared from the website. She called me, the first time in months, screaming, "You destroyed my life. Are you happy now?" I didn't yell back.
I just said, "No, but I'm finally free of yours." And I hung up. That night, Lauren called again. She'd seen the changes too. The nonprofit rebranded, Mom stopped speaking publicly, our extended family started asking questions, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to answer them. I hosted a small dinner, invited cousins, aunts, even an old family friend. I told them everything. No drama, no accusations, just facts. By the end of the night, 3 people hugged me and said, "We wish we'd known sooner." One of them told me, "She always seemed too perfect." Now I know why it felt fake. Slowly, the silence that once protected her started to crumble. And me? I started writing. Not just posts, a real book. A memoir, maybe. Something for kids like me who grew up thinking their pain was imaginary. I called it Buried Letters. My dad helped with it. Lauren offered to write a chapter. And we decided to donate part of the proceeds, not to Mom's nonprofit, obviously, but to a real organization for families torn apart by parental alienation. Because this wasn't just my story. It was bigger than us. But still, this was my family, my story, and finally, it was being told the right way. Not through her voice, through mine.
A month after my mother's fall from grace, something strange started to happen. She got quiet. Not just not talking to me quiet, I mean silent. Her Facebook, once flooded with inspirational quotes and self-congratulatory posts about being a warrior mom, went dead. Her nonprofit emails bounced. The house I grew up in went up for sale. She was disappearing. At first I thought it was just damage control, the kind of calculated silence she always used when she felt a storm coming. But this time, I could tell the silence was real. She had lost control. And for someone like her, that was worse than losing money, worse than losing friends. It was a death sentence to the identity she'd built. I wasn't celebrating, exactly. I didn't dance on the ashes, but I wasn't sad either. I had spent too many years grieving a fantasy version of my family to feel bad about the truth finally having a voice. But that didn't mean it didn't mess with me. One night I found myself standing outside that old house, the one she'd just listed. It was empty now, windows dark, grass overgrown, a for sale sign leaning crooked in the yard. I remember standing on that porch as a kid, clutching a school project, waiting for her to unlock the door after work. I remembered the sound of her heels on the tile, the way she'd frown when she saw I hadn't done the dishes, even if I was 7. I remember thinking, if I can just be perfect, maybe she'll be happy. And now, the house was as hollow as the story she'd forced us to live in. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I'd already taken back what mattered. But that night I realized something else. I wasn't done. The story might have ended for her, but for me, it was still unfolding. Because the truth doesn't fix everything. It just sets the stage for healing. And healing is a brutal, slow, honest thing. Lauren and I started therapy together. Not family therapy, just 2 siblings trying to unlearn 20 years of manipulation. We fought, cried, laughed, remembered things we didn't know the other remembered. She confessed how scared she'd been to believe me at first. She made us think loving her meant hating him, she said, and I didn't know how to stop. I got it. I really did. Because I had hated him, my dad, for years. Not just for leaving, but for making me feel like I was something people gave up on. And now, I was building a relationship with him one phone call at a time. He came to visit us finally. We didn't make a big show of it, just a dinner. Me, Lauren, and him. We sat around my kitchen table, the same one that used to have Mom's rules laminated and taped to the surface. And we just talked. It wasn't perfect. He was nervous. She was guarded. But it was real. And that was more than I ever thought we'd get. After dinner, he pulled a small box from his coat. Inside were copies of every letter he'd ever sent me. He said, "I kept them all, in case you ever wanted to read them from the beginning."
I cried. I didn't even try to stop it, because those weren't just letters. They were proof that someone had loved me the whole time. I just didn't know it. Over the next few months, things kept shifting. Lauren told our extended family everything. Mom tried to do damage control, claimed we were brainwashed, but no one really bought it. Even our aunt, the one who used to defend Mom no matter what, pulled me aside at a wedding and said, "I think I owe you an apology." That hit harder than I expected, because I realized for the first time I wasn't alone. Not anymore. I was part of a new family now. Not just the one I was born into, the one I chose to rebuild. And there was one last piece I needed to confront, my mother's side of the story. I wasn't going to talk to her, I wasn't stupid, but I wanted to understand how she became who she was. So I started digging again, this time into her past. I found things. She'd grown up in a household even worse than ours. Father an alcoholic, mother cold as stone. She left home at 16, put herself through college, built everything from scratch. It didn't excuse what she did to me, not even close. But it explained the fear, the control, the obsession with appearances. She thought if she let go of the narrative, she'd vanish. And in a way, she did. She lost us. Her children. Her legacy. Everything she built on a lie crumbled because I held up the truth and refused to back down. I didn't feel pity for her, but I stopped hating her. And that was something. That was peace. One night I was scrolling through Reddit again and saw a comment on my old thread. "This story gave me the courage to find my dad. Thank you." That one broke me. Because maybe that's what all this was for. Not just revenge. Not just justice. But freedom. For people like me. For people still trapped. Still believing the story someone else forced on them. I replied, "You deserve the truth. Don't stop until you find it." And then I turned off my phone, walked into the living room, and sat down next to my dad. He smiled without saying anything. And for once, the silence didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like healing.
It's strange how the ending of something doesn't always feel like closure. I used to think exposing my mom, clearing my father's name, reconnecting with Lauren, I thought all of that would flip a switch and make me feel whole again. But healing isn't a moment. It's a million small choices to not let the past define who you become. And even though I told the truth, taken back the story, even burned her narrative to the ground, I still had one thing left to do. I needed to reclaim my name, not just legally, but emotionally. See, for years I avoided using my last name, her name, the name she wore like armor in every newspaper column and single mom podcast she ever hosted. It felt poisoned. But now, I wasn't ashamed of who I was anymore. I filed to legally add my father's last name back to mine. No ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet form, a signature, and a moment of stillness in the clerk's office. And I remember thinking, this is mine now. Around that same time, something else happened that I hadn't expected. A woman reached out to me, a former colleague of my mom's from her nonprofit days. Her message was short, hesitant. "I know you probably don't want to talk, but I worked under your mother for years, and I think you should know, I always believed there was more to her story." We met for coffee. She was kind, nervous. Said she always felt like she was being lied to but couldn't prove it. Said she'd tried to bring up concerns to the board once and suddenly found herself demoted. "Your mom had a way of turning people into villains if they didn't serve her version of reality," she said. I smiled at that. I knew exactly what she meant. She handed me a USB stick before she left. I kept copies of a few things, in case someone ever needed the truth. I didn't look right away. I waited until I was home. And when I finally opened the files, I found documents, emails, drafts of speeches my mother gave, and comments she removed, comments from people who questioned her,
told a different story, or even thanked my father for being the real backbone. She erased them, rewritten her past in real time, but not well enough. This woman, this stranger, had saved them, and now they were mine. I didn't publish them. I didn't need to. I just filed them away, not out of spite, but preservation. They were proof of who she really was and who I had become despite her. The book I started writing, Buried Letters, was finished within a year. Self-published. Nothing flashy, but it took off. First in small trauma healing groups, then in communities for estranged families, and finally, on Reddit again. People shared it, reviewed it, cried over it. I got messages from teens, adults, even grandparents. This is my story. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I'm sending this to my son. And that's when it hit me. I had become the thing she always pretended to be. Someone who helped people. Someone who told the truth even when it hurt. Someone real. And in that realization, the rage I carried for so long finally faded. It didn't vanish. I still had bad days. I still had flashbacks. But the need for revenge? Gone. It had already served its purpose. It broke the silence. It freed the truth. And now, it was done. My mom moved across the country last I heard. Some say she changed her name. Others say she's trying to start fresh. I don't know. I don't care. I don't think about her often anymore. Not with hate, not with longing, just distance. And that's how I know I'm free. Lauren and I started hosting monthly dinners. Sometimes with Dad, sometimes just us. We invite people we love, people we trust, people who know the real story. We toast to surviving, to growing, to choosing something better. And every time we clink glasses, I look around and think, this is the family I built. Not the one I was told to protect, not the lie I was forced to live in. This truth, this imperfect, messy, beautiful truth, is mine, and it's worth everything it took to get here.